Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 351. Hey guys, sorry for the delays. This past week was super busy and I get sick and it goes away and it comes back. It's just a rough time. Anyway, chapter 351. You know, you probably heard all kinds of people's opinions. You're here to hear my opinion. I'm going to give you a worthwhile analysis here. I'm going to talk to you directly. When it comes to the chapter, I think there are some really interesting things when it comes to Shoto's power. Now, mind you, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to care about the science. I know people are saying like, oh, you know, Shoto might be freezing something else other than water. I actually think that's a really reasonable thing. There's all kinds of science-y stuff that the author could bring here. Now, mind you, the author isn't actually like a hardcore science integrator when it comes to shonen powers. Like, honestly, when you look at the shonen that integrate science hardcore, I think one of the gold standards, and I say this facetiously because like usually science is it's like an author goes and reads about something and then just kind of jams it in there, but some people put more effort in their jamming in there, right? Like Air Gear. If you read Air Gear, you know there's a lot of tomfoolery going on in Air Gear. Fun fact, Air Gear was the one that told me about pretty much like a lot of heat could mess with the magnetic field. Never knew that before, but Air Gear, there you go. Point is though, the author for Hero Academia, that's not his style. He's not like that. He won't really go there. Oh, you know what? Black Clover's author. That guy could definitely go there, but the Black Clover author has a lot of things that the Hero Academia author lacks, unfortunately. And also, there's a lot of things that the Hero Academia author has that the Black Clover author lacks. It's, you know, it's a nice little balance. Anyway, I kind of like rambled there, but it's just because I'm excited to talk about the part about Shoto's power. We'll get to that, but first we should talk about the story aspect of Shoto versus Dabi. So this is an opinion I have. I'm not going to ever change my opinion on this because I think this is indicative of the problems with the final arc, and I think we're in a point where, you know, we're at the end. The author doesn't really care anymore about doing things appropriately. He doesn't want to take time. I think every fight in this situation could be made better if the author took more time, but this is a guy that ultimately thinks that if he's not done in this year, something has gone wrong. And this is a guy that planned out to only have 55 chapters for his final arc before realizing that's a pretty stupid idea. So unfortunately, that prevailing thought he seems to have about ending this arc quickly will ultimately impact everything else, and the Shoto vs. Dabi fight is one of those places where you do see that. Now, you know, at the end of the day, there's also deadlines and all that kind of stuff. In one way, if the author was told he only had 80 chapters, what you end up seeing here is like, oh wow, you know, you're really doing your best to try and get everything done within 80 chapters. You know, you kind of change the metrics. But like Hero Academia is so popular that he has enough negotiating power that he honestly shouldn't be given any last minute deadlines until he's 10 weeks away from ending. So when it comes to this, the big thing here is I don't think that story-wise Shoto versus Dabi is a good fight in terms of the setup. I don't think Shoto has all that much rhetoric with Dabi. I don't think that this is in any which way compelling. I think that the author has to justify why it's okay for Shoto to fight Dabi. When I say okay, I mean like narratively okay for Shoto to fight Dabi. The reality is Dabi is Endeavor's enemy, not Shoto's. Like Dabi before this, like during the war, Dabi just sees Shoto as a tool to hurt Endeavor because he's fixated on Endeavor. The issue here is that there is so much emotion between Dabi and Endeavor that putting Shoto in there, Shoto who is significantly less passionate, it creates a really weird dichotomy. So what you have here in this chapter is really the author trying his best to justify that Shoto is narratively correct to be in this fight. Now, the thing that comes out from this is that what we're having here is pretty much the author is a salesman who is telling the reader like, hey, this is the reality, this is why it works, and you as the reader have to say, well, I don't know, I don't think this works, I don't think this was well built up, or I think it works, I think this was perfectly alright. It really depends on your tolerance as a reader. I don't think it goes there in terms of the narrative, but that's just me. Another thing though, if you step away from what is narratively correct, because in a narrative, like, because the author is God, they can control things in a particular way. If we step away from that perspective of things have to be a certain way because of the nature of a story, and we look at it from the perspective of you know, life is just a random thing, the Shoto versus Dabi fight becomes more valid. Because in the approach of looking at it from the perspective of real life, you know, in real life, you're not always going to have poetic justice. You're not always going to have the correct story. Real life is a lot more messy. Real life, there's a lot more compromises. When you look at the Shoto Endeavor situation, there is a lot of compromise here because Endeavor had to go fight all for one, which what Shoto is doing for Endeavor is actually very exciting, and what Dabi did for Endeavor also super exciting, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, when you look at it more from the perspective of real life and just this is the ugliness of life coming out, this looks more appropriate just because, yeah, in real life you can't control things as well as you could in a story. So it depends on what you want to emulate, right? If you were a story that you were emulating real life shenanigans, it would be a different thing. But fundamentally, Shoto versus Dabi just doesn't work because both characters have to... Sorry, I just got a really weird email about my taxes. Both characters have to justify to each other why they mean something to the other. And it's like, we know that's not really the case because Shoto doesn't really care all that much about Dabi. The other thing here is that this so far kind of ruins something from the Dabi Endeavor Shoto build-up, in that it wasn't just Shoto and Endeavor saying they were going to take out Dabi. Like, they brought up their family. Ray came out there to say, like, hey, I screwed this kid up too. It made it seem like the family was going to have a bigger thing here, and it really is just Shoto and Endeavor. But logically, that's correct. The others shouldn't be anywhere near this. It's just narrative build-up is clashing with the reality of the situation and maybe also the deadlines. Unfortunate. I do think if Hero Academia had the idea of the final arc lasting 3 years instead of being ended this year, I think we would have a different situation. Alright, that's a general note there. Very quickly, I want to talk about the power, right? So phosphorus or phosphor, depending on your translation. I've seen a lot of explanations. I have no idea what's going on. This is one of those spots where I can't wait to see the anime because I want to see what the anime is going to do about it. The only things I'm going to tell you guys is, and the people on live stream heard this yesterday, but I think Shoto was using his eyesight the entire time. When we look at page 2, you see Shoto puts both of his hands together on top of his chest. I don't really know why he has to like activate his chest like that, but I'm guessing it's just like it does something to the fire or the ice that's being produced there. Anyway, it looks like there's hard pieces here. I do think that Shoto was using his ice side the entire time, as he was also using his fire side the entire time as well. Now, the big clues that he was using his eyesight the entire time is page 10. In page 10, you look at Dabi and you see that he has this part of his body that's smoking, like it's kind of like fizzling out, right? That's the first sign that Shoto cooled Dabi down. What's actually super interesting about that shot is that the arm that's being cooled down is the arm that would have been best touched by Shoto's fire side. So that's really interesting. It might just be a thing that whatever Shoto did to his chest is just hyper-cooling everything around him. Then Dabi goes out of his way to point out that Shoto neutralized all the heat. So that's the other big sign there. There's no way around it. Shoto must be... He must be hyper-cooling everything down. Like, not even just... Even if he was to take the oxygen out of the air, which I don't think is going to be what's happening, I don't think anything would cool down because heat can radiate. Heat radiates through space without any particles there, so getting rid of the oxygen doesn't really do anything. So I do think there's hypercooling happening from the ice side, or like whatever is being produced here. When you look at page 14, the big thing that people pointed out is that the fire was coming out from Shoto's ice side. I don't think it's coming out of there. I think like Shoto covered that thing in ice and then he ignited it. So this is the idea I have, is just he's somehow igniting the ice, and the ice might be, well, not water, but might be another gas cooled down to some weird degree. So that's what I'm thinking there. Flammable ice. I don't know how he did it, but especially when you see his chest and the fact that he was charging that up when the sidekicks were helping him, I really just think that maybe he creates the ice and then he ignites it, and that's what gives the flame its shape. I think that would be what works. Now, mind you, trying to figure this out is so complicated because it's hard to tell what's ice and what's fire with the way Horikoshi draws things. because it's so hard to figure out what's going on with this power, I do think Horikoshi has to explain it. So I do think next chapter, 352, is going to have a flashback or an explanation of what this power does. Now, personally, I'm hoping that Dabi does more. Like, he's still not burnt to a crisp. So until Dabi's a pile of ashes on the floor, I think Dabi can still rant a little bit. I do want more from Dabi, and I hope we get it. What I am currently fearing, I really hope that Dabi gets a few more chapters. I hope that Dabi doesn't die only to become an Edo Tensei type revival when Toga uses twice his quirk, if she can. Because right now what I'm fearing the most is Toga just making all the villains that pretty much crapped out, and that being the way we get more Dabi stuff. That's what I'm really concerned about. I really just want more Dabi. I want to see him rant. Like, Dabi's at his best when he's ranting, and I'm just not seeing it here. He just got hit by Shoto, right? Like, I need to see more of the ranting. Alright. Let's do page-by-page walkthrough and get through this. So the first page is an establishment page taken from the Hero Almanac. What I'm looking at here, one of the best things I thought about this page is the line that goes, when Endeavor mastered this move in his quest for power, he came to understand his own limitations, and that fire produced a shimmering heat haze that warped and distorted all that he gazed upon. I actually like that idea. I like the idea that when Endeavor realized his maximum potential, he despaired because he couldn't go any higher. Like, he hit his limit. I like that idea, and it's correct with what we've seen with Endeavor in the entire series. Endeavor's limits are ultimately what screw him over a lot and distort the reality that he was seeing. He was despairing because he couldn't be stronger than he was. There's also something a little bit poetic that's going on with what the author wrote here. So first, if you look at Shoto's face, the line is produced a shimmering heat haze. The critical line there is shimmering, because shimmering is actually a really pretty word. If something's shimmering, it's like, oh my god, kind of like magical. And then you have Shoto being the one representing the shimmering, and then it turns into warped and distorted all that he gazed upon. So warped, distorted, both very negative words, very emotionally charged, and then you have Dabi's face there. So behind the prettiness of this initial pursuit, you have the ugly reality. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can break it down, but like the choice of the words and the emotions that they kind of pack, and then like superimposing them on the respective faces was really, really good. All right, on page 2 is where you see a few signs of like, hey guys, Dabi's actually really into Shoto. Like, when he starts going in there, he says, oh yeah, you know, talking to you, Shoto, I've motivated myself. That's pretty much what that first panel says there. And just the author, again, super self-aware. Okay, apologies there. Had to do something real quick. But yeah. Page 2 is also like, in page 2 you have more of this just justification. Like, you have the line, now that I think about it, with a cool head, even if Dad ain't here, you'll make for some kindling. That's pretty much Dabi settling for Shoto. So that's what he's pretty much doing. Like, he has all this energy for Endeavor, and then he has to like slightly maneuver it over to the side for Shoto. It kind of takes away because you're not progressing, like quite literally, you're not progressing to the top as quickly as you could. Page 3 is more justification of Dabi saying like, hey, yeah, man, like 100%, I can find things to dislike about you. What I liked on page 3, though, is that Dabi talked about how not being able to feel the pain actually helped him with max output. What's really critical here is that the doctor said that Dabi would not be able to use his flames like he once was, whereas Dabi's saying like, yeah, no, man, my accident actually really helped me use my flames more. I really do think it's just an issue of the doctor being wrong about saying that Dabi wouldn't be able to use his flames as before. And I mean, like, wouldn't it be the first time the doctor is wrong? Like, the doctor was wrong about the idea that Dabi could be manipulated in any which way. They found out the hard way. Alright, page 4, not really an important page for any kind of discussion. Page 5 is more important just because you get to see how crazy Hell Spider is. You get to see that's a characteristic of Dabi. Wild, powerful, really cool to see. Page 6, we have Ida remembering that he's relevant to Shoto's storyline because he made himself relevant. He's also the one, in case you weren't able to notice the difference with Hellspider, to point out like it's so much thicker and so much more haphazard. Pretty much saying like, yeah, Dabi's thicker and more chaotic. We get to see a cool little moment here, probably one of the few moments we see with the Endeavor sidekicks where they are able to help Shoto not take the hit here. Now, this is one of those scenes, we talked about it on the live stream last night, but with this scene, I really do believe that the author should have made a bigger deal about this, just to say something like, hey, the sidekicks gave Shoto the 5 seconds he needed to actually be able to use his technique, right? Because this just makes it, like White Despair, the commenter pointed out, it just makes it look like the sidekicks countered an obvious distraction. They fell for the distraction, and Dabi came from behind Shoto and still managed to hit him. And like when you have the trajectory guy saying like the spider was a smokescreen, it's pretty much him saying like, oh, it was a smokescreen and we fell for it. We didn't see the actual guy coming in through the smoke, right? So that's the unfortunate thing. It makes the sidekicks seem like they didn't really do a lot on that one. Okay, page 8 is a pretty good Dabi strike. Dabi's also asking Shoto about like how he looked when he was hiding with the civilians. Honestly, pretty weird little comment. Like, it just shows that they don't really have that much to talk about, so he just brings up this random thing of just hiding around. Page 9, we go into more of Dabi's assault there with Shoto as he tries to block Dabi. We have Burning pointing out that the heat is going up like that, just pointing that, yeah, this is going to be actually really dangerous for Dabi. We have Dabi talking about how Shoto was really blessed, and ultimately making a comment about depending on other people. What's critical on that line is specifically Dabi's ignoring the hellish treatment that Shoto received. He doesn't bring into mind at all how much Shoto suffered in all of that, which just again shows Dabi's perspective in this. We go into page 10 of Dabi telling Shoto he'll never make anything of himself, which is honestly, I think, I don't see that anywhere. Like, Shoto is one of the top 3 guys. Shoto does a lot. I've seen Shoto succeeds a lot. I'm not like this. The thing here is like you can say that, but I don't have any connection to that line because I see no proof of that anywhere else. You know what that ultimately does? It makes Dabi just look kind of crazy, which he is. But a lot of times, well, actually, you know, Dabi does talk and run his mouth a lot. But it's just like during this kind of fight, it's just you're lobbing things that don't really make a lot of sense. Page 11 was important for the neutralization of the heat. We already talked about that. Shoto talks about how he's happy that Toya was looking at him too. We have page 12 justifying how he came up with his technique. But honestly, you know, it's just Shoto's journey so far. But I don't see how like the first 2 moments in UA allow him to stumble into this thing. I don't see those moments as being critical for this big thing that he had here. Regardless, it was cool to see like the summation of his moments up till now. We find out that Shoto turned Flash Fire into something else, that it's now a move made to stop you. I really hope it's just like a lot of vapors are released from the ice or something. Again, I really hope that ice just gets caught in flames. Page 13 is probably one of the most interesting pages for me. Because Shoto tells Endeavor that he's one of the only people with any hope of opposing All For One. That is a wonderful idea. Also, this was happening while Mina was yelling at Sarah and Kaminari. I wonder if that's important. Anyway, yeah. Endeavor being the one that can take out All For One. Man, listen, if Endeavor actually takes out All For One, I'm going to be so happy because that would be so weird. Like, man, I really, really hope All For One tells Endeavor, like, bro, you are so diabolical, I couldn't undo the stuff you did to Dabi. That would just be hilarious. I need to see it. If this is how Endeavor ultimately surpasses All Might in that he actually kills All For One, that would be amazing. But at the same time, it's just like, wow. Never thought we would be here, but here we are. I really wonder what Plan B is going to be. Anyway, page 14. Page 14 is Shoto speaking the correct thing. That being, yeah, you know, life sucks, but you can control how you react to it. Like killing innocent people, that's not cool. You did that because you're messed up. No, that actually is true for almost all the villains. Just because life sucks, you could control how you ultimately react to it. And again, Twice is a really good sign of why the villains are ultimately going to self-destruct. It's because when they actually get power, they self-destruct. Twice does. Twice did. He self-destructed because he wasn't a person of strong moral character. Ultimately, what happens to him at the hands of himself, yeah, that's appropriate. And the reality with the villains is that they're all idiots. Dabi a little bit different, but they're all idiots, and that's why All For One can take advantage of them. All For One preys on the weak-minded, and that's what Shigaraki ultimately went out of his way to gather in one place. Like, you think Stain is going to be okay with All For One? Nah, man. Nah. But that's who All For One thrives with. He thrives with people he can manipulate. And that's all the villains are. They're just useful puppets for All For One. Friends, as he would like to say. But ultimately, what Shoto is saying here is correct. You can 100% adjust how you react to a situation. We have Flashfire Fist. We have Shoto pretty much calling the image of Endeavor with the way that he looks there. Pretty cool. Now, one part here, Dabi says his little masterpiece. I really do think that that one line is indicative of Shoto mastering the ice side and being able to do high flames without feeling the negative effects of like what Endeavor and Dabi feel. So he can pretty much stay in high flames and high temperature without the fatigue that comes with it. That's why I think he calls him his little masterpiece. I think at that moment Dabi saw the pinnacle of the ability. Anyway, you end this with Shoto saying just aim all the rage at us. I do think that, you know, if we're talking about, yeah, just keep raging at us, it kind of feels like Dabi's going to keep raging next time. So I do hope we see something from Dabi. If Dabi has a second quirk, now's the time to use it. If Dabi gets a second win, now it's the time to use it. Again, Dabi still has a body, so I think he can still fight as long as he's conscious and no one hits him in the back of the head. But we'll have to see. Guys, I have to rush away now, but thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.